Want to advertise your business in a cost-effective way? It's time to give podcast advertising a try. Research shows a high rate of podcast listeners made a purchase as a result of an ad they heard on a podcast. Visit podbean.com/brands to launch a cost-effective podcast advertising campaign in minutes. That's podbean.com/brands.
Lady Justice is a true crime podcast, therefore deals with incidents of violence, disturbing imagery, and explicit content. Listener discretion is advised. The Lady Justice podcast wishes to offer their deepest condolences to the victims' families and wishes to offer thanks to those that work in emergency services. Hello my lovelies, and welcome to another episode of Lady Justice, a true crime podcast. Lady Justice is a weekly podcast that covers fascinating cases, both past and present. My name is Chantel, and I'm your friendly true crime junkie with a slight caffeine addiction issue. I hope everybody is incredibly well and have had a wonderful Christmas. As usual, before I get into this week's episode, I just want to ask you guys a huge favour. Please support this podcast by subscribing, rating and leaving a review where you can. And because sharing is caring, I want you to go tell everyone you know. Share it on social media and get the word out. It would make the world of difference. If you'd like to contact me about anything at all, please feel free to do so via social media or my email, which you'll find in the show notes. As it is almost the new year, I do want to wish everybody the best. Whatever you're doing this New Year's Eve, stay safe. Did the wife mean to shoot her sleeping husband? Stories of forced threesomes, spiralling debt and infidelity certainly suggested she had motive. So, without further ado, here is some background on the location and time frame of this crime. We are travelling back to 1992, the year that the UK saw the financial disaster of Black Wednesday happen under Prime Minister John Major, a fire at Windsor Castle, and the deaths of comedians Benny Hill and Frankie Howard, and the former hangman Albert Pierpoint. It was a year that even the Queen would publicly admit to be a bit of a failure. We are heading to Cramlington, nestled in the county of Northumberland. It's quite a small town. The humble beginnings came from the coal mining industry. It did have quite a growth spurt as one of the many post-war towns, and is surrounded by a very pretty rural landscape. Cramlington has links to famous people such as comedian Ross Noble, who was born in the town, police band member Sting, who used to work as a teacher in one of the schools there, and the footballing legend Alan Shearer, who used to play for Cramlington Juniors. As always, all my sources will be listed in the show notes. So let's get on it like a car bonnet. It was a mild winter's morning on January the 30th, 1992, in the quiet cul-de-sac in East Cramlington. A dull glow of the early morning sun lay gloomy grey covering over many houses as a dog barked on Alston Avenue. It was just before 8:30 a.m. Then, a loud bang was heard from a front bedroom overlooking the street, and a flash of light filled the glass pane. Silence was the only thing heard after the echo, and that's where we will begin. The home on the suburban estate was occupied by the Kelly family. Michael and Linda lived with their 3 teenage sons. They owned a pet dog, and although many friends and neighbours admitted the family had recently been through some tough times, everything seemed to be looking up. So when police started to file into the street, taping off the area and knocking on doors, residents were shocked to find the Kelly home was the centre of the commotion. Michael Kelly had been shot in the back of the head as he lay asleep in bed with a 12-bore single-barrel shotgun. Witnesses saw his wife Linda being escorted from the house, placed into the back of a police car with blood still splattered across her face and hair, as the shocked community looked on in horror as thoughts for their 3 children entered their minds. Michael, also known as Mick to his friends, was a well-known figure in the community. He was described as a warm man, funny and passionate. Michael had previously worked as a pit deputy at the Bates Colliery before it closed in 1986, becoming a close friend of Blythe Valley MP Ronnie Campbell. It was a hard time for many after the closure of the mines, and unemployment was rife. Michael, though, seemed to be one of the lucky ones, able to provide for his family after gaining employment as a lorry driver. Unfortunately, Michael had an accident that caused an injury to his legs that left him unable to continue his work. He decided to try and fill his time with a hobby and became a keen gun enthusiast, often attending shooting parties with members of his family and friends. The day before the 45-year-old father's death, he had been attending such at a farm owned by his good friend Michael Brewis. Brewis described Michael as an affectionate and very caring sort of person. Being one of the last people to see him alive, he spoke of how he couldn't believe such a tragedy had occurred. Michael was married to Linda for more than 20 years. It hadn't always been the happiest of relationships, but they had tried hard to keep their marriage going for the sake of the children. Linda was a year younger than Michael at 44, and enjoyed many of the same hobbies as her husband. The investigation began immediately after the call from the victim's wife. The distraught woman was taken to one side and asked what had happened in the couple's bedroom. Linda claimed that she had awoken to take the dog outside. Michael was still asleep in the bed, turned away from her, and she had gone to reach for her shoes and coat that were placed in the corner of the room. A gun that she had picked up from the floor had accidentally gone off whilst she was moving it and tripped up on her dressing gown. When she looked down at her beloved husband, all she could see was blood. Forensics piled into the double bedroom, noting the blood on the walls. Michael had been shot in the back of the head from a distance of about 18 inches, or 45 centimetres. Just think about that for a second. That's less than half a metre. His brain matter was spread across the room, all along the walls, and was called a gruesome sight by those who had entered the room. His death, thankfully, was instantaneous. Motives appeared when door-to-door inquiries had started to take place. Many neighbours spoke to how the couple had a rather stormy marriage, especially over the past few years. There were tales of infidelity and spousal abuse. The seemingly normal couple started to show cracks in their marriage during the summer of 1990. The couple had been arguing regularly, and they had separated, with Linda going to stay with her parents in Scotland. The couple decided that the boys should stay in their family home with their father. During the June of 1990, now that Linda was away, although still in constant contact with her family, Michael met someone new. She lived locally and was called Violet Bradbury. Michael was instantly attracted to his neighbour, and they got on well. The attraction was mutual. Telling Violet that he was in fact divorced instead of separated, they began a sexual relationship that intensified rapidly. Over the summer months, Violet moved into the Kelly family home with Michael and his children. During the September, however, Linda had a change of heart and desperately wanted to try and repair her marriage and be there for her children. Without phoning ahead, she bid her parents goodbye and arrived in Cramlington unannounced. Letting herself into the home using her keys, she saw women's shoes that were not hers lined up with her children's, clothes that were in the wardrobe that were hers, clothes in a wardrobe that was once hers, and a woman sat with her family. Hurt and confused, Michael, Linda and Violet sat down to talk about the situation before them. Linda was told that the affair had actually ended some time ago, as the relationship had cooled somewhat, and Violet was moving back into her own place. The women then spent a good time alone talking, and Violet told police when questioned she believed everybody was on good terms, as she and Linda had grown a close friendship since the years had passed, and both had apologised for bad words said in anger previously. Violet had also told officers that Linda and herself had had many meetings after the affair was exposed, and Linda had often lent on her for emotional support. She told of a time which highlighted a different aspect of the Kelly marriage that was just coming to light with the other interviews with those that knew the couple. During 1991, Linda Kelly had turned up at Violet's home asking for shelter. She had claimed that Michael had been abusing her physically, and on this particular occasion, taken all of her money. The abuse was mentioned by a few that knew them, Linda appearing bruised and uneasy, and the police noted this as something that they must consider. With such a strange accident happening, they did suspect that maybe a gun being fired at a sleeping man may not be that, an accident. The officers working the mysterious death uncovered a web of deceit. Linda and Michael's dirty laundry was being aired out, and the police had to look at everything to gain a full picture before deciding whether they should charge the distressed wife being held at the police station. The couple were in a huge amount of debt, thousands of pounds being owed to various lenders and companies. They had failed to pay numerous bills for some time, and were in arrears of over $2,500 with their mortgage lender. This had been a cause for marriage strain in the past. The police uncovered that Michael had filed for divorce before they reunited in the autumn of 1990, citing Linda's financial mismanagement as a cause. But did he know of the couple's current financial situation? The police believed that he did not. The many bills and final demands were found hidden, and those close to Michael said that he never mentioned how much debt the couple were in. Everyone spoken to said that he would have done, as they had previously been at risk of losing their home, and at that time he openly shared his worries with his closest friends and family. Officers questioned Linda about their financial situation, and she told them that he was well aware. The officers then asked what action the couple were taking, and Linda told them later that morning they were actually going to go visit their building society manager in relation to the debt. Police then interviewed the manager at the building society. The manager told them something that made them question the proposed. Police then interviewed the manager at the building society. The manager then told them something that made them question the proposed accident further. The couple had previously had an appointment booked to address their financials on the 22nd of January, but they received a call from Linda saying they couldn't attend. Why? Well, because one of their teenage sons had been killed in an accident. This was a lie though, and the police knew that, and Linda could not provide an explanation. It cemented in the investigators' minds that Michael was most likely not aware of the arrears and the possible repossession of the property. One question that was on everybody's mind was why was there a loaded shotgun on the floor of a bedroom? As previously mentioned, Michael had been at a local farm with a shooting party. The police noted that there was a locked guns cabinet in the bedroom that held numerous guns, all legally owned by Michael. So why then hadn't the gun been locked away with the others, knowing that there were 3 adolescents in the house? The gun that had shot Michael was actually the victim's brother's gun. He'd been out with Alexander, his brother, and when Michael returned from Shilbottle, he had told Linda that it was unloaded but needed to be cleaned before put away. Interviews were conducted with all those that had been shooting with both Michael and Linda previously. Michael's brother Alexander had said that his brother was serious about gun safety, and he didn't believe that Michael would just leave a gun laying about, especially one that was loaded. Asking about Linda, he went on to say that she'd been on plenty of trips out with the shooting party, and that he had seen Linda shoot before. Linda knew all about guns. She knew more than I did. There was one more piece to the puzzle that gave the police a feeling that not everything was what it seemed. When detectives had spoken to Michael's former mistress, Violet, she told them of how Linda had come to speak to her about something incredibly personal. She said that Michael would demand she do things sexually that she was not comfortable with. He often urged Linda to go out to look for men and women to bring home for threesomes. Detectives went back to Linda with this, and she admitted that she had taken part in some threesomes, and that she was not wholly consenting to this. She provided names and stated that yet again, the shooting of her husband was not on purpose, but a freak accident. I went to put it on the bed, and I don't know. Then there was just this noise, a bang. There was just this bang, and I don't know how or why. Oh God, I wish to God I did. I would hurt nobody. Michael is my life, and I love him so much. The police and the Crown Prosecution Service, however, given the circumstances and apparent motives, believed otherwise, and charged Linda with the willful murder of her husband. She was seen at a special hearing at Blyth Magistrates Court on February 1st, 1992, just 2 days after Michael's death, and was remanded for 28 days pending further inquiries. Linda Kelly's trial began at Newcastle Crown Court in the October of 1992, overseen by Mr. Justice Laws. Opening for the prosecution was Paul Worsley, Queen's Counsel. Addressing the jury, he opened with what happened to Michael and why the Crown believed his wife of over 20 years was responsible for his deliberate killing. The shotgun cartridge, which was discharged, hit the back of his head as he lay in bed and literally blew his brains out. He then continued, stating that he would show evidence from the pathologist and forensic experts that could prove Linda had committed a purposeful act of murder. Then the prosecution added what they considered to be the biggest motive, the forced sexual interaction with others demanded by Michael. This is something that didn't happen with her consent, and clearly she was very distressed by it. Perhaps fueled by anger for him, for things that he might have done in the past. His wife aimed at his head and pulled the trigger. Witnesses testified to the packed courtroom that the victim Michael was very safety conscious about guns, especially so when they were present in his home due to his children. His brother David said that whenever Michael finished a day's shooting, he would unload the weapons, put them in the boot of his car and the cartridges separately in the back seat. He stated his guns were always kept in the cabinet in the bedroom. When the possible motive of debt was brought forward by the prosecution, they spoke of how Linda was often seen twitching about the windows when the postman was due, so that she would be the first at the door to collect the mail. Forensic accountants found the couple to be in an eye-watering amount of debt. A witness that worked in the insurance office told the court to how Linda had once come in asking for help to settle the debt on their car insurance. Linda said that Michael had discovered that the insurance had lapsed, and whilst in a ball of tears, said that he will bounce me off the walls. Forensic experts talked of how the angle of the shooting meant that it was very unlikely that the shooting could have occurred during a trip or fall. Christine Kelly, the victim's sister, told of how Linda wanted to kill Michael months before. She stood in front of the jury and recalled an incident when she had joined them shooting. Michael was climbing over a fence and Christine had watched Linda point a gun at his back. Michael was completely unaware until he turned around and, shocked, but thinking it was light-hearted fun, gave his wife a lecture on safety. The incident was talked about by the three who were there later in early 1991. Everybody had been joking about what had happened, but 2 days later, Linda, pulling Michael's sister to one side, admitted to Christine that in all honesty, she would have shot Michael if he didn't turn around when he did. Christine also claimed that she was so worried that she had actually spoken to a solicitor about the remarks. The main focus of the prosecution's case was the motive surrounding the sexual relations that Linda was forced to take part in, such as having intercourse with family friends as Michael watched on. A witness who had agreed to testify to the court was Mr. Robin Wright from nearby Blythe. He admitted that he had taken part in what can only really be described as rape. Mick kept pushing Linda to have intercourse with me. She didn't want it. She was crying. It's what Mick wanted. Part of his fantasies, so to speak. He wanted Linda to make love to me. He didn't say why. I think it was just part of his ambition. Linda was in a dressing gown or nightie. She was lying between us in the bed. He also acknowledged that it had happened on more than one occasion. A second occurrence happened in the couple's semi-detached home. Mr. Wright, who was divorced, said that he felt utter shame and disgust at himself for becoming involved in the sex sessions, stating they were purely to satisfy Michael's lust. He said that Linda was upset as I was. On the 6th day of the trial, the defence began to give evidence. Admitting the marriage of Kelly's was not one that was ideal. It was one built on love with 3 children. They spoke to how respected in the community the couple was, and how truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. This was just an accident. They showed layouts of the room and explained in which way Linda had reached, possibly tripping up on her dressing gown to get some items from the corner of the room, and how the gun could have been discharged. They explained that she had no ill will to her husband, and the jury were given copies of Linda's diaries to read in private, which demonstrated her undying love for her husband. When Linda Kelly took the stand, she told the jury of how much she and Michael had been working hard on repairing their relationship. Disputing the prosecution's case that Michael was killed to cover up any financial mismanagement, she repeated what she had previously told officers, that her husband was well aware of their situation, with him being unemployed and the couple both actively trying to find a working solution. She also strenuously denied that her husband had been shot as a form of revenge for the affair that Michael had with neighbour Violet Bradbury. She did admit that it was not a good time for their relationship, but they had been together for a long time, and everyone goes through rough patches. She also admitted that she did feel much more secure about their relationship, since Violet had left the area. When discussing the couple's sex life, she agreed that she was not comfortable with the threesomes, but also said that she never considered hurting Michael because of them. He was the love of her life. She couldn't believe that she was on trial for a freak accident, and that she still couldn't actually believe that it had happened. Whilst this long testimony to the jury about every aspect of her relationship, Linda got extremely distressed. She was so emotional that she was allowed to retire from the dock on the first day of her cross-examination, to resume in the next day. The emotional Linda did so, and was accused by the prosecution of playing the grieving widow in a bid to sway the jury in her favour. Through tears, she said that she had not even got over the death of Michael yet. The jury also heard from Elsie Croft, a neighbour of the Kellys. She spoke to how Linda was embarrassed and ashamed to meet people off the street because of the affair. She also said that Linda was over the moon when Michael's former girlfriend left the area. Elsie testified that in August 1991, Linda had turned up at her home, bruises covering her arms, extremely distressed, saying that Michael had broken 3 of her ribs. The neighbour was asked about the last time she'd seen Linda or Michael, and answered that she'd seen Linda just before Christmas in 1991. Elsie said that the middle-aged mother seemed much more like herself, and loved her husband, and was really trying to make things work in their marriage. On the 10th day of the trial, the the courtroom was held in silence as Justice Laws announced that the trial would not continue. It had come to the attention of the bar that one of the jury members had spoken about the case outside of the court. In the UK, jury members are forbidden to speak of the case that they are part of, even to friends or family. A female jury member had done so in this case. Justice Laws said that the unnamed juror had spoken of how she was eager to know more about the three-in-the-bed romps at a Law Society dinner, and ordered the trial to be relisted to be heard again. Every member of the jury was dismissed and told that they did not have to serve again. The trial had already cost the taxpayer a hefty £100,000, and many asked if the trial really needed to be dropped so late in the testimonies. However, a spokesperson for the Ministry of Justice said that it was within Justice Law's powers to do so, and they supported the decision in favour of a fair trial. It took 4 months for the trial to be relisted, and Linda Kelly once again stood in the dock. It was to be held at Durham Crown Court on March 2nd, 1993, and lasted 2 weeks. Presenting for the Crown once again was Paul Worsley, Queen's Counsel, who opened with a damning statement to the jury about Linda and her character, her relationship, and her obsessive personality. The Crown believes that she would never again leave him and let another woman take her place in her home. Continuing with how Linda frequently lied to cover the reality of the financial issues that the couple were facing, he pressed on how she had called the bank to cancel a meeting in the weeks before the death of Michael, claiming her son had died in an accident, saying he had not been killed, there had been no such accident, but you may think it significant that 8 days later there was a death in the family, and she was to say it was an accident. It was her husband's death. The trial's evidence followed much the same as it had done previously when held at Newcastle, with evidence being produced by medical experts and witnesses close to the couple. Evidence produced in the defence's case that hadn't been heard because of the previous dismissal included tapes from the police interrogations. One in particular was the last one before she was formally cautioned and charged with the willful murder of Michael Kelly. The crackle of the recording started with the voice of a detective saying, "Is it the case for whatever reason that you deliberately shot your husband?" The crackle of the cassette continued for a second or two before the weepy voice of Linda filled the room. "Oh no, I didn't. I wouldn't hurt anybody, least of all my own family. Please, I wouldn't hurt anybody. Oh God, that's an awful thing to say." The diary entries that had been given to the previous jury were done so again before the judge summed up and asked the jury to consider, did Linda Kelly mean to shoot her sleeping husband in the back of the head, or was it just a freak accident? The tension could be felt by all as the jury filed back into their seats a little over an hour after they retired. Michael's family sat silently in the public gallery, watching intently as the foreman stood up and announced, "Not guilty." When Linda heard the verdict, she burst into tears and had to be assisted to her feet by a female court official. The judge ordered her immediate release. Outside of Durham Crown Court on Monday the 15th of March 1993, Linda Kelly was still so filled with emotion, tears streaming down her face, that she was unable to give any remarks to the waiting press. However, her solicitor, Guy Goodings, read a prepared statement. Mrs. Kelly is still very distressed. She is very relieved after 14 months of distress and tension. She now has to go back and pick up her life without her husband. She doesn't know where she will live. It could be at Alston Avenue, which is still the family home, but I expect her to go to Scotland and be with her parents for the time being. The prosecution also made a statement and said that all of Michael Kelly's guns would be retained by the police so they could be transferred to a firearm certificate holder for sale, and the proceeds would be passed on to Linda Kelly. But what do you think? Did she mean to do it? Was there enough motive? Was it just an accident? Let me know what you think. So that's the end of this case, and to balance the scales somewhat, I want to propose that we all do a small act of kindness to make the world a little kinder place to live in. This week, I want you to think of people you know. If you know someone that's a little overwhelmed, perhaps by a new baby, family health issues, or something else, give them a call when you're going out to the shops. Ask if they'd like you to pick up something. It can really bring a smile to someone's face and remind them that they're cared for. With that, go be good people, go be kind, go be safe, and most importantly, go be happy.